Road trip in 2011 between Minnesota and Oregon. I was 11 years old. We were driving through North Dakota, on our way there looking for a hotel at nearly midnight that still had space. We drive down a dark road that had fields on either side. After about 20 minutes, my dad figures we had gotten bad directions and thought it best to turn tail and head back into town. About 10 minutes on the way back, we see a bright neon vacancy sign that 100% wasn't there before. This was a straight road that was pitch black, so I know that hotel wasn't there before. Well, since it was late and the only one with rooms left, that was where we stayed. The room was small and smelled of dust and musk. My sister and I had to share the bed. Everything was so dusty and we kept finding dead moths everywhere. I don't mean 2 or 3, I mean dozens of them. The shower didn't work and the water that came from the sink looked like watered down coffee. Luckily we had bottled water. I barely slept because I kept hearing creaking and moaning noises. Every time I checked outside it was pitch black, but didn't seem like it was windy. I did wonder, however, why it was so dark out. Surely I would be able to see the residual light from the signs, right? I eventually passed out from exhaustion. We woke up and checked out by 6 a.m. to get good time. I was still half asleep, but when we got to town for breakfast, my dad talked to the waitress about the worst hotel we stayed in, and gave the street name. She said that street was just farms and farmhouses. No hotels. We checked the map, and she was right. No hotels there. So my dad decided to drive down that road, even though it took us about 30 minutes out of our route. Sure enough, no hotel. Not even a farmhouse, just one rundown barn halfway collapsed amongst the fields. When I was a kid, about 9 years old, my parents and I got stuck on a mountain in a bit of a snowstorm. We were there on holiday and had rented a cabin nearby. I thought it was cool, but my parents did not, as we were legitimately stuck and quite in danger of freezing as our car died as well. An older man in his, 50s happened to come down that same road in a much more snow-fit car, and he offered us to stay at his place and tow our car in the morning. We accepted and went with him. He, his wife, and his 2 kids lived in a frankly gorgeous house only about 10 minutes further up the road, on the only side road that led away from it at all. It even had a little sign where the bend turned off with the address. Anyway, we have dinner with them, then me and their kids went to watch TV. All was fine until it was time to go to bed. I declined their offer to sleep with the kids, 2 boys a little older than me, and slept in my parents' room. Sometime in the night, I woke up and needed to pee, so I woke up my mom and went downstairs with her to the bathroom. I was a bit scared alone in a strange house. On the way back up, I spotted the host parents in the kitchen. It was dimly lit and they were chopping something up. I don't know why I tried to get a closer look, but what I saw was a foot. A human foot, and they were chopping away at it. My mom immediately dragged me up to the bedroom and told me it was nothing and that I saw it wrong. But she also put the desk chair in the room right in front of the door and put a bunch of stuff on it. She told me it was fine and that I should sleep, but I couldn't, and neither did she. My father told her she was crazy when she told him the story. Come morning, they cooked us a huge breakfast, toast, jam, bacon, everything. Oh God, the bacon. Neither me nor my mother touched anything meat-related. And when my father saw we were genuinely freaked out, he didn't either. The guy gave us a lift back to the car, jump-started it for us, and we went back to our own rented cabin. My parents discussed what had happened at length, and eventually my dad agreed to call the police. So they call. They get a police person on the line and explain what happened, give the details, etc. The police person tells them that there is no house near what we described. At all. That along that road, the forests are too thick to even be able to build. My dad eventually gives up, and on the way back home we pass the same bend on the same road. And there's nothing there. This is one of the 2 roads up that mountain, and there's no way that we confuse them as this is a single lane and the other one is a dual. Yet there are no turns off of it, no little sign with the address. Funnily enough, none of the 3 of us could remember what the sign had said either, so ultimately we just left. That's the last time we rented a mountain cabin, and my mother refused to speak about the holiday as soon as we headed back home. My dad still thinks she and I are crazy. I used to work at a restaurant that was at the top of a mountain. That was for the most part the last commercial thing you'll see until you pass over into the next county. After a particularly late night, the dishwasher and I were hanging out, and he offered to show me his town and give me some points of reference to stories he had told me about himself. He was a crazy dude with lots of crazy stories. He lived in the county over, and I lived in the same county as the restaurant. So, against my better judgment, I decided to ride with him in the opposite direction from where I needed to go to get home. We ride for a while, and after a fun night of telling me about his town and all the stuff he's done, he decided to take me back. He mentioned he was going to go the longer way back because it was safer. I asked in what sense, and he didn't seem to want to reply. After pressing him for why and I needed to get back, he agrees to go the short way. Still didn't explain. It's about 1:30 a.m. at this point when we get near the road that he claims is why he wanted to go the other way. I ask why, and he tells me that people go missing down that road. The people that do come back claim a lot of weird stuff that doesn't make sense. Being a super big skeptic of folktales like that, I convinced him that we should go down it. The road looks completely normal, except it doesn't have a street sign. As we get around the bend that hides the rest of it from the main road, I realized it hasn't been serviced in years. Potholes everywhere and a lot of cracks in the road. We passed by a few houses with the lights on, and I swear each house had a person standing in the window watching us drive by. I still can't feasibly believe I actually saw that part. We get past the houses, and at the end of the road is no warning at all, but just a dead drop-off. It looked like the road had just been chopped off and nothing was left but a cliff. My friend gets really panicked and says that's what everyone claims is wrong with this road, and immediately turns around to leave. We leave, and he gets me back to my car in record time. As I get out of his car, I notice that the sides were covered in what looked like handprints, but it was cold and the car had frost all over it. My friend and I don't speak about it for weeks. Finally ask him about it. He doesn't remember ever going down a weird road. Has no clue what I'm talking about. No one has ever heard of it. Drive down the same road and try to find it the next day. It's nowhere to be seen. Google Maps doesn't show a road or any sign of a cliff at the end of one. The skeptic in me believes I must have dreamt it or made it up, but it was way too real. The memory is burned into my head, the same way you remember stuff really well after a traumatic event. This actually happened to my grandparents once. They went into a restaurant/pub while they were on holiday at some seaside resort in England. They asked the bartender if they were serving food, and he said something about the chef not being in on that day, so they turned around and left. My nan noticed that all of the patrons' faces weren't visible, like something was casting a shadow over their faces and nothing else. They made it out of the pub with no issues and ate somewhere else, thinking it was weird that the chef wasn't in. When they drove past the spot the next day, the building was gone. It was an empty lot, and it had been that way for decades. I was on a train that didn't exist once. My friend and I were running late, and we got to our platform thinking we'd missed the train. There were no other people on the platform, despite there still being a few minutes until the train showed up. We waited around just to see, and the train pulled up right on time. It was a busy evening in the town we were in, and we were kind of wigged out that the platform was so empty, but whatever. We get on the train and sit down. After a few moments, we realize we're the only people on the whole train. Rural area, train is like 3 carriages. The train pulls out of the station and we remain the only people on it. And we were a little nervous, but ultimately laughing it off. This is one of those rural service trains that stops at every single tiny village on its route. So it's only about 2 minutes until the next stop. We figure more people will be on then. A minute passes and then another. We should be there by now, but the train is still going. It's dark outside, so it's impossible to see where we are. But we're moving at a normal speed, and every so often the train sways, letting us know we're going around bends. It seems to be the same route as usual. The train is oddly quiet. All the usual clanking and thudding absent. 4 minutes pass, 6 minutes. We should have been through at least 2 stations, but nothing. Finally, after over just 10 minutes, we pull into a station, and it's the first station we should have arrived at. My friend and I have had enough, and we jump off at that station. The platform is deserted. The train pulls away down the completely straight track, but its lights, red taillights, bright yellow squares of the windows, all vanish as soon as it pulls free of the platform. There's no noise, no wind, no creaking of the rails. My friend and I step back to try to find an information board, and suddenly the platform is loud again, with several small groups of people scattered around and an overhead announcement for the next train. The next train that pulled in was the train my friend and I should have been on. Despite it only being 2 minutes away and us boarding the train in its spot over 10 minutes ago, the information board showed the time as 3 minutes or so having passed. We have no idea how to account for any of it.